guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a 2022 wrap-up video. I'm going to talk about every single book that I read in 2022. I will be giving you my Storygraph ratings. I use both Storygraph and Goodreads. For Goodreads, I rate more like if I was recommending it to someone. In Storygraph, I do more like my personal opinion, like I get petty basically. Like I get very picky in Storygraph compared to Goodreads. This video is already going to be pretty long because I read 114 books in 2022, so I'm just going to get right into it. I'm also going to be going through the books pretty fast. I'm going to do a separate video with my most loved books so that you guys can have more an in-depth opinion. I can talk more about the books because if I talk about every single book I read, we're going to be here forever. So the first book I read was Undoubling Street by Samantha Young. I gave this one a 4 stars. Then I read The Royal Assignment. This was more like an audiobook and it wasn't narrated the normal way. So normally like the same narrator does both male and female, or we have a male and a female, but we never have like people actually acting. Like in this book we can hear like even like people honking like their horns, and you can hear people like walking in the cars outside. Like it was more of a movie without seeing it, just listening to it. So it was fun, but I still gave it a 3 star because I wasn't like obsessed with it. Then we read Cold Tea by Mariana Zapata. I love this book. I was obsessed. I give it 5 stars. Then we had Heartstopper Volume 4 by Alice Oseman. I also watched the series on Netflix. I love them. I like the series more than the books, but obviously the books are still like 5 stars for me. I love them. I'm obsessed with them. They hold a really special place in my heart. So when I watched the series, I was very excited, and obviously I was obsessed right away. Then I read the Ricochet Addicted #2 book. This was a novella for the Addicted series, so it goes like between Addicted and Addicted After All, and it is just about Lily. Lo is not in it. I just didn't like it. I rated it 2 stars. Then I read Act Your Age, Eve Brown. This is the Brown Sister series, the 3rd book, and I gave this one 3 stars. I actually did not love this series like most people do. It's too YA for my liking. I know that it has spice, so it is technically not YA. I still felt like the book without the spice felt very YA for me, so I just wasn't obsessed with it. I gave it 3 stars. If I had to choose my favorite one from the series, it would be the second one, Danny's and Saphir's story. I love that, and she's bisexual, so obviously we love a bisexual queen, so yeah. Then I read Reminders of Him. This one I rated 4.5 on Storygraph. I think on Goodreads I have 4 stars. I gave it 5 stars at first, but then I saw the vlog that A Clockwork Reader, Hannah, she made, and she said that like the guy wouldn't have even thought about giving her a chance if she was ugly, and now I can't unsee it. So now like it's rubbing me the wrong way and like now I have to like lower it to 4.5, but like when I read it, the experience felt like a 5 star for me. And then I did a reread of The Spanish Love Deception, which is my favorite book of 2021, so that one was obviously 5 stars again. Then in February I read 8 books. I started with Constellation by Corinne Michaels. This one was really good. I used to love Corinne Michaels back in the day when I used to like not read as much. I only did like audiobook, and I was like full-time soldier. Like I used to be in the military, so back then I didn't read as much like books. I would just listen, and I used to listen to like all of her books. She has like these 3 series about small town romance, and they're amazing. I'm gonna put the ratings on them and everything. I love her books, but I feel like after reading all of those, I'm just over it. Like, okay, I get it. It's kind of like the same thing over and over again. You know, it gets old real quick. So I just decided to not read any more of her small town romances. Constellation was 4 stars. I actually did like this book, and I read a second one, like the second part of this series or this book this year as well, and I rated it like 3 stars because it wasn't like as good as the first one. I feel like the first one was really good and the ending was amazing. You can definitely like, it was like a cliffhanger. So obviously I went into the second one very excited, and it just wasn't it. Then I read From Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata. This one was 5 stars for me. It is about 2 figure skaters, and she's about to turn that age where she's about to not be able to compete anymore. So, and her dream is to compete. So she's like basically joining, like becoming friends with this guy who is kind of like an enemies to lovers, and he's gonna help her to basically make it and all that. So it was amazing. It was slow burn, which is my favorite. Mariana Zapata, if you guys don't know, to me she's the queen of slow burns. She knows exactly how to make them. So obviously I was obsessed with this book, just like I am with everything she writes. Then I had Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bellefleur. It was good, I was just not obsessed. Then I read The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. This is the only one that I read that I rated less than 5 stars because the guy, like, yeah, he became better throughout the story, but like, did we forget how he treated her when she was an assistant? Because I didn't. Then I read A Chance for Us, which is Willow Creek Valley series number 4, and this one is by Corinne Michaels. This is from the series that I told you about. I gave this one a 4.5. Then I read November 9 by Colleen Hoover, and all I wrote was the audacity, because the audacity for people to think that this is one of her best books. Like, have you read any of her books? Listen, sometimes you have to put reality outside of your head, right, for you to like entertain a book, but at the same time I feel like there's certain things that I just cannot get past. Like the fact that she is the way she is because of something he did, and she has no problems with that. Like, I get it, but at the same time, it's illegal. Oh my god, I don't know. It's just weird to explain it without spoiling it. But basically, he's just toxic. And also, this is gonna be a little bit of a spoiler, but like they were supposed to see each other November 9th every year. They don't talk the rest of the time, only on November 9th, and they barely saw each other. So one of them, like she barely made it, or he barely made it. Something happened where like they just barely made it, barely saw each other. And you're telling me that after like 4 years where they saw each other for a total of like what, less than 24 hours, if you like sum it up, they're in love and they're meant to be? I'm sorry, but that's a no for me. Then I read The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. This was a 5 stars for me. I was obsessed with the story. All I'm gonna say is the way Kwon made her come out of her shell, that was it for me. I think all of them have autism, or like, okay, so Stella in the first book has Asperger's, and then in this one Kai is autistic. So in this one Anna is also autistic, and Kwon is Kai's brother. So because he grew up with an autistic brother, he knows what to expect, and I just feel like he was perfect for her. It was just amazing. And then I read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I gave this one a 5 star, I think. I lowered it to 4 stars because I don't remember why I was obsessed with this book. It's a great story. Is it like 5 stars worthy? I don't think so. Definitely overhyped, especially on TikTok, which is how I found out about it, by the way. In March, I read 7 books. The first one was Yolk by Mary H.K. Choi. I love this one. I was going through my biggest depressive episode I've ever had in my life, so I could relate to her a lot. There was a quote that I was like, yes, and it's kind of messed up. Like when I posted it on my Instagram, I was like, I wonder if people think I'm weird, because it talks about like basically being jealous of someone who has cancer, and it's kind of messed up to say something like that. So I feel like unless you read the book and you know like the context why she said it, then you will get it. But if not, then you're like, are you saying that you want to have cancer? Like, what is wrong with you? So she says, I know it's spoiled and reckless, but for a moment I'm jealous of June's cancer. June is her sister, by the way. There's such powerful recognition in the diagnosis. Everybody respects cancer. Being sick with cancer will explain my sadness, my sickness, my anxiety, and the horrible suspicion that everyone in the world was born with a user's manual or a guide to personal happiness but me. And if that's not the most relatable quote that you can read, if you have ever dealt with depression or anything like that, then I don't know what is. Then I read A Lot Like Adios, which is the Primas of Power #2. This is a series by a Puerto Rican author. I'm Puerto Rican, if you guys don't know. So obviously I am here to support my Puerto Rican queen, and I did not love it. I rated it 3 stars, and I read a lot. You Had Me at Hola, which I read in 2021. This is the second book in that series. It is a different couple. It is her cousin. Her name is Jasmine, and he is Lucas, I think. And they're both bisexual, so obviously as a bisexual person, I loved and I was so very excited about reading a book about 2 bisexual main characters. The problem with this book was that I feel like there was no build-up. They were together when they were younger, and then they finally met, and instead of like it being awkward and kind of like getting to finally being together, I feel like they went straight to it. And then it was more like about how to break the news to people. I don't know, it was just not what I expected. Editing Suhail here. Like, I don't know why I thought that the whole book was about them breaking the news to everyone, but it wasn't that. It was, so they broke up because he moved to California, and now he's in New York again for the first time since he moved. So that's why it was like she was nervous to see him and all that. But after they hooked up, the story was more about like what's gonna happen whenever he goes back to California, basically. And then they were trying to hide the fact that they were hooking up to their family, which is why I confused the plot. But like, I just felt like it wasn't exciting. It wasn't exciting, and it took me so long. I think it took me like 2 weeks to finish it, and I finished books in like 1 day. So yeah, it was just not it. Then I read The Marriage by Cale Slater. This one was a 3 stars for me. I didn't like it that much. The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. This one was a 4 stars for me. I was expecting this one to be a 5 star. Then I have Birthday Girl. This one I gave on Goodreads 4 stars and 5 stars in Storygraph because I refuse to admit that I was obsessed with the book where the girl is dating a guy and they go to live with his dad and she ends up dating the dad. It's just one of those books where you have to take away your reality. Like, would I do this in real life? No. Okay, then like pretend like you would. You know what I mean? But it was so good. It was so good. It was so good. Like, I'm sorry, but it was amazing. Then I have Todo lo que necesito existe en mí o ya en mí, which is Homebody. I read it in English. I just didn't like the cover in English, so I put it down as if I read it in Spanish, even though I didn't read it in Spanish. And then I found a copy of it in Barnes & Noble. It was like a special edition, and I finally bought it without the original cover because I hated the original cover. And then I read Conviction by Corinne Michaels, which is the second book that I told you about in February. April. So if you guys don't know, I am a big BTS fan. I feel like everyone knows someone in their lives who's obsessed with BTS. I'm that person in people's lives, okay? So when I saw that Axie-O was coming out with XOXO, and it was a story of a regular ass girl dating an idol, and my celebrity crush is Jungkook, yeah. I'm reading it. Like, I don't even know what the book needs to be about, like what the plot is. I'm pre-ordering. Like, I think I pre-ordered it and everything. I was like, you mean to tell me that they're gonna make a book about an idol that I can picture, like if it looks like Jungkook? Count me in. I rated it 3 stars because it was way too YA for me, and the guy kind of pretended that he didn't know her in school, and that was too much stuff for me to get over. Like, if you pretend like you don't know me, my feelings for you out the window. Then we have Things We Never Got Over. This is Knockmouth series number 1. This book was very hyped on TikTok, which is why I read it, and I was obsessed with it. It was 5 stars for me. Then I read Hook, Line, and Sinker. This is the Bellinger Sisters number 2. I actually like this one more than the original one, like the first one, and I think that's an unpopular opinion. There's another book here, I think it's like in my top 3, that I was obsessed with, that most people hated, and they liked the first one better. And then I have All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. This one was a 5 stars for me. Not her best book, but it was a 5 star. Then I read A Brush with Love by Macy Edding. As a dental assistant, I was so freaking excited to see a story about dentistry. Like, finally we get some representation going on, you know? And I feel like most people find my job weird, which is why nobody writes about it, because nobody finds it like romantic or anything like that. So I rated it 3.5 because it was so boring. It's not giving what I was expecting, basically. Okay, are you guys ready for this next one? Because you guys are gonna be mad at me. I rated it 3 stars, and it's Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I know a lot of people like this book. I get it. I feel like I should just come to terms that I'm just not an Emily Henry gal, okay? I'm just not it. That's just not what's in the cards for me. As well as Ali Hazelwood. I'm just not an Ali Hazelwood girl. I know people rave about both of them on TikTok and in Bookstagram and everything. I'm just not into them. I have never loved any of their books the way people love them. People are obsessed with them, and I just don't know why. Like, I just don't know why. So this one, I feel like I was just disappointed because I went into it thinking it was gonna be a romantic story between Nora and Charlie, and it ended up being about Nora and her sister. So yeah. Then we have Flowers on the Moon. I gave this one 3 stars because I only liked like 20% of the poetry in here. The other ones were just okay. Then I read You Loved Me Once by Corinne Michaels. I gave this one a 5 stars. I was obsessed with it. I'm gonna like talk about this book in my 5 stars because I really liked it and I feel like people should read it, but I don't want this video to be long, so I'm just gonna move on. Then I read 1% of You by Michelle Gross. And Gross, I just realized her last name is Gross. I wrote, is the breast milk for me. There's a scene in this book where he is basically, you know, it's a spicy scene. And he's doing his thing with her sisters, and she just gave birth, so she's breastfeeding, and breast milk comes out, and instead of, I don't know, I just feel like, okay, I didn't want him to be like, you know, but I didn't want him to be like, you know, like he was. Okay, I guess what I expected was the author to just not mention breast milk. Like, If you can't make breast milk sexy, which I highly doubt you can, just don't. Just keep it out of the book. It was only a line. It's not gonna make the book, like, it's not gonna make that much of a difference. It wasn't like a plot twist. It wasn't anything like that. Just keep it out of the book. Then I have The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. This one was a 3.5. And mainly because there was not that much, I didn't find it thrilling like it was supposed to be. And I feel like it was not what I expected. I expected it to be a thriller, and it ended up being a story about her and her in-law, like her daughter-in-law, who they just never got along. And basically because of what happened, they have to be around each other, and like it's like basically like how their relationship develops versus what they're actually looking for. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like it just wasn't what I expected, so I gave it a 3.5. But the story is good. So if you go into it expecting it to be a book about a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law whose relationship goes from not liking each other to like something better, then yeah, I highly recommend this book. But if you go into it expecting it a thriller, it's just not gonna give what you're expecting. All right, let's move to June. So in June, I reread The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I gave it 5 stars. And then I read Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I became a fan of Abby Jimenez because of this book. I give it 5 stars. It was my favorite book of 2022 from June to October, because in October I read my favorite book of 2022. So this one was a very close second. And the main character, I was obsessed with him. It is an age gap romance. She's older than him. And small town, big city romance as well, which is, I love that type of book. I was reading this book at my sister-in-law's house that weekend. Like, while I was there, Roe v. Wade got overturned, and I literally remember, like, I spent that whole weekend there, like, either in bed, like, laying down sobbing because of what happened, or reading this book. Like, that's all I have. Like, when I think of Roe v. Wade being overturned, all I think about is how I just sobbed for a whole day, and then this book got me through it, because I feel like I wouldn't have made it. Especially not being at home. Like, I feel like Roe v. Wade being overturned was such a big deal to me that, like, I would have rather be at home and express my feelings and, like, cry openly instead of having to hide in a room. You know what I mean? I don't know, whatever. Then I read the Miss Right series. I read the first one and the second one. The first one was a 5 stars. The second one was a 4.5 because one of the characters was a little bit unlikable, so I had to take out half a star for that. But, like, both stories were amazing. Then I read The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. I give this one a 3 stars. And then I read Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, my queen, my favorite author of all time, and I gave this one a 5 star. Of course, I have a lot to say about that, but I will leave that for my 5-star video. Then in July, which is my birthday month, I read Birds of California by Katie Cotugno. I gave this one a 4 star because the guy was way too cocky for my liking. Like, you can tell he was a celebrity and he knew it. Like, he will let you know, okay? That rubbed me the wrong way. Then I read a few non-fictions. I don't rate non-fictions, so My Money My Way by Kumiko Love. This was a finance book. It was good. I just feel like all of that information could have been found online for free. Then I read The 4 Agreements by Miguel Ruiz. That one was good. I just didn't like there's 4 agreements, so I agree with all 4s, but then at the end, like the last chapter, he talks about basically like you have to forgive everyone regardless of, which I agree with. Yes, you do have to forgive everyone, but like I do believe in distancing yourself from people that just don't bring anything positive to your life. Like, I mean, they don't have to bring anything into your life to stay in your life, but like if all they bring is negativity, it's okay to distance yourself. And I feel like the book was telling me that, like, no, you shouldn't do that. So that's why I gave it, I mean, I didn't rate it, but in my head I gave it like 4 stars or 3.5 because of the ending. But like the 4 agreements themselves, amazing. Then I read The Goal, the off-campus number 4. I actually like this one. I like The Deal better than The Goal. And then I feel like The Mistake and The Score were kind of like equal to me. I think they were like 3 stars for me. I feel like I got over college stories in 2022. Like, I'm down for college aged people stories, but like stories that take place in college while everyone's like drunk and acting a fool and like just doing unnecessary things that will complicate the story for no reason. I'm just not into it, basically. Then I read You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. I like this book a lot. And then I read Twisted Love by Anna Huang. I gave it 4 stars. Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman. I gave this one a 5 star. I love that one. One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, my queen again. I gave this one a 4.5 because I wasn't obsessed like I am normally with her books. This is one of her older books. I feel like I like her newer books better, except for Forever Interrupted, which I read this year as well, and I was obsessed. Then I read The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca. That's a mouthful. I rated this one a 4 star. I feel like this is the romance I was expecting from book lovers. That's what I wrote, I think, in my review. Then I read Fault Lines by Emily Itami. I rated this one 2 stars. So my rating in my head always is like 1 star for DNFs, 2 stars for books that should have been DNF but I didn't. I finished them. 3 stars for books that I liked but I didn't love, like I wouldn't recommend them. Then 4 stars for books that I really liked and I will recommend. And then 5 stars, like my god tier, you know, books. So then in August, I read 8 books. The first one was Every Summer After. This one is by Carly Fortune. This one was very raved about on TikTok. I personally disagree. I don't think it's all that. It's just love in other words in a different, like with different characters and a little bit different storyline, but like it was giving love in other words. Then I read The Spirit Almanac. This is more like about basing your life and like your plans and everything on the moon, the seasons, like basically like what to do during spring, what to do during winter, what to do during full moon, during new moon, that kind of stuff. I believe in those things. Like I know that people do like New Year's resolutions. I still do, but I feel like it comes off better like in the spring because that's when things are blooming and coming out and being new again. You know what I mean? So like that's kind of like what the book is about. Then I read a poetry book called The Sun Will Rise and So Will We. I rated it 3.5, but I liked it enough to keep it in my bedside table for whenever like I'm meditating or doing any type of like basically like give me like topics to think about and things to think about that I probably wouldn't never. That's what I have it for. Then I have Snapped. This is the 4th and last book in the Playbook series. I lived in Colorado when I read the series, so obviously I could relate to everything. Like whenever she was talking about like 5 points and stuff like that in Denver, I knew exactly where she was at. I could relate to everything in the book, which is why I connected to it. But if I have to choose, I would say only read the first one and the second one, and then the 3rd and 4th I would just skip because I personally did not love them as much as the first 2. And if you're gonna choose only one, go for the second one. I feel like the second one was the first one I read, which is maybe why I'm so biased towards it, but like it was good enough for me to be like, I need to read the whole series. Then I read Faking with Benefits by Lily Gold. I gave this one a 4 stars because the story was good. But first of all, it was super spicy. If a female character is doing it with 3 men at the same time makes you uncomfortable, probably not the best book for you because it is a reverse harem. But I didn't know if she was gonna choose one of them at the end, so I did not want to get attached to any of them. Like if I liked one of them better, I'll be like, well, I like him, but like I don't want to get my hopes up and then end up hating the book, so I'm just not gonna get attached. And I was like basically overthinking it, so I did not enjoy it while I was reading it. But I feel like if I would have just kept those thoughts to myself and just like ignore them, I probably would have rated this maybe 4.5. Then we have Educated by Tara Westover. As someone who went through deconstruction in 2020-2021, this was amazing. It was like about a girl whose dad was a doomsday prepper. Is that what you call them? Like people that are always prepping for the end times and all that. So yeah, anyways, she was basically like her dad was like that, so her whole family was like basically like away from society. So basically like they were very ignorant. The things that I don't know, I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but it's definitely a good read and I will definitely give it a chance if you are into like off the grid, like things that you don't normally see. So it's definitely very interesting. Then I read No Longer Human by Junji Ito. I actually want to read all of his books. They're like manga, like horror manga. I rated it 4 stars because I wasn't obsessed with it, but I did love it a lot. It was kind of weird at times, and I feel like that's the point. So obviously I looked past it. I've actually had Frankenstein and Tomaya. I had those like show up like ready for me to borrow them from the library, but I just give them to the next person in line because I feel like after reading this one, I kind of had to be mentally prepared for what I'm about to read. And I hear that like Uzumaki, Tomaya, and all that are like a lot. So that's why I went with No Longer Human first, because I was like, let me just start with like something that people don't like say it's like crazy, you know? So it was still crazy. It was just probably not as crazy as what I'm about to read in his other books. I read Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez because in June I read Part of the World or Part of Your World, and obviously I got hooked. I loved the writing. I remember reading The Friend Zone by her, so I was like, I need to keep reading all of her books because clearly I like her writing, and I ended up rating it 5 stars. Abby Jimenez is definitely top 3 authors for me right now. So since September I read 14 books. I read The Silent Patient, which was 4 stars. I DNF'd 3 books, I think. So Bunny, it was my 3rd time reading it. The first 2 times I got to like 10%. I did not like it. I DNF'd, and then this time I was like, okay, I'm gonna at least try to get to 50%. I still wasn't into it, so I DNF'd. For Addicted for now, I was bored, but then I feel like when they were in Mexico and like Lo's brother was not checking out Daisy, but like you could tell he was showing interest. Yeah, that's you're gonna act. The fact that like this series is like got tier for a lot of people on the internet, and one of the stories, like the guy was interested in her when he was an adult and she was a child still, like that just, I just cannot look past that. I'm sorry, I cannot get past like a grown man checking out a teenager. Like I just can't. I can't. And then Credence by Penelope Douglas. That was a really good story. It's also one of those like you have to take, I feel like Penelope Douglas in general, you have to take reality out of your head for you to read her because her stories are insane. This one was about a girl who basically like her dad passed away or her parents passed away, and she had to move in with the only family that she had, which was like a step uncle that I don't think she's ever met. And then he had like 2 sons, so like her step cousins, so they're not like blood related, but it's still weird. And she moves in with them, and basically she's with all 3 of them, which again, I can look past that. But one of them basically assaulted her, and then she acted like she still slept with him after that, and like everybody, like, am I supposed to look past the fact that he sexually assaulted her? I can't do that. I can't. I'm sorry. So I DNF'd. I did finish it. Like, I skimmed through it and, like, got to the end to see how it ends. But I didn't, like, actually read from, like, I would say, like, from 70% to, like, 95%. I just, like, try to go, like, I went over it. But, yeah, I could not. I was like, I can't keep reading this. It's gonna fuck up my head. Then I read The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. That was a 3.5. I read The Happily Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez again. I gave that one a 4.5. Then I did like a novella by Ailey Hazelwood, the Under the Roof one. I gave it a 3.5. Then I read Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau. This one was a 4 stars for me. I loved it. I did Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one was amazing. I will talk about this in my 5 stars, and also about Conversation with Friends by Sally Rooney, which is the next book I read, and that one was a 5 stars for me as well. And then I read The American Roommate Experiment, which is the Spanish Law of Deception #2 by Elena Armas, and this is the other book that I told you guys that I liked more than the first one, and the first one was my favorite book of 2022. I mean of 2021. So if that doesn't tell you how much I loved this book, then I will go more in depth about this book and like the whole situation in my other video, but I was obsessed with it. And then I read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Janine McCurdy. If you guys watch iCarly growing up, I will do the audiobook for this book because she narrates it and she's an actress. So obviously it feels like Sam is talking, like grown up Sam is talking to you about her life as a child and all that. But yeah, it's pretty fucked up. So look at trigger warnings before you go in. I know she deals with eating disorders, and like her mom was definitely abusive. Then in October, which was my best reading month yet, I don't know why it says 20 books. I thought it was 24. I will insert a clip at the end if I did skip some. So the first one was Terms and Conditions. This one was a 4.5 stars for me. Then I had Almond. This one was a 3.5 stars for me. Then I had The Stationery Shop, 4.5. This one was beautiful, heartbreaking, highly recommend. Then I read the Folk of Air series, so The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing. And why did I waited so long to read this series? When I found BookTube for the first time ever in 2018, Wicked King had just come out and everybody was reading it. And I remember back then I never read fantasy, so I was like, it was like one of those books that like you're not interested, but like everybody raves about it so much that you're like, should I read it, you know? So yeah, I never read it until this year and I'm so glad I did. My favorite one was The Queen of Nothing. I rated 4.5, like the first two, and then the third one was 5 stars. The ending for this book had me sobbing. Normally when I cry in books is out of like heartbreak or something happens that like it's just like a negative thing happens, but like the end of this book was so like filled with so much happiness that I just sobbed. I sobbed. Then I read The Hawthorne Legacy, which is the second book in the Inheritance Game series. I thought it was boring. I gave it a 3 stars. Then I read my favorite book of 2022, which was Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and it is a duology. The second book came out in November and I read it as well. This was obviously a 5 stars for me. If I could rate it 10 stars, 100 stars, I will, because it is my favorite book of all time. I will definitely be going into that one in my next video, so stay tuned for that. Then I read More Than You'll Ever Know. I gave this one a 4 stars. I loved it because she gave me Evelyn Hugo vibes. I feel like her and Evelyn Hugo had very similar personalities. Then I DNF'd The Duke and I watched the Bridgerton series and I was obsessed. So I tried to read the books and they're just not for me, I guess. Then I read The Courage to Be Disliked. I didn't rate it, but it was really good. I did Wicked Fox and I rated it 4 stars. Then I have the Inheritance Games here, but I think I read that in September because obviously I read it before the second one. But that one I rated 4.5. I really liked that one. I did not like the romance and I did not like the characters. Grayson was my favorite, but even though he was my favorite, he was still not very likable, basically. So then I read Convenience Store Woman. That one was 4 stars for me. The Guest List, 4 stars. Then I read Icebreaker. That one was a 5 star for me. I will be reading this series, even though it is a college series, because I was obsessed with it so much and I am willing to look past it, but I think that is the last college that I will be reading. Then I read Simply Living Well. Loved that. Didn't rate it. Then Finding Me, which is by Viola Davis. This one was a memoir and I loved it. Then I read Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. This is the same person that wrote my favorite poetry book, the one that I told you about that I put in Spanish on Goodreads. This one was 4 stars for me. And then I DNF'd, wait for it, Love on the Brain by Ailey Hazelwood. Yeah, more of the same. That's all I'm gonna say. More of the same. Very unlikable male character. I did not like him. In November, I read 10 books. I read Essentialism by Greg McKeown and Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. These were both 4.5 stars for me. Best nonfictions I've ever read, and they are literally life-changing. I'm so glad I read them back to back, especially. I have a lot to say about these 2 books, and I will in my next video because they were amazing. Then I listened to Evidence of the Affair by Taylor Jenkins Reid, of course. This one was a 4.5 stars for me. Then I read Mistakes Were Made, 3.5. This is about a girl who falls in love with her best friend's mom. Then I read Carrie Soto Is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one was a 5 stars read for me. If you tell me that this book is about a tennis player who has the world record and somebody took it from her and she came back from retirement to take the record back, I will be like, cool. Like, sounds cool, but I would rather watch it in a movie than read about it. Yeah, no. This book is it. This book is it. If it wasn't because Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote it, I wouldn't have tried to read it, but I am so glad I did. Then I read The Heart of Sun Warrior. This is the second book of the series that I told you that was my favorite of the year for me. So obviously I give this one a 5 stars and I will definitely be going in depth in my next video. Then I read The Push by Ashley Audrain. 5 stars. Y'all, this book, yeah, I definitely have some thoughts about this book, so we'll go into it. Then I read Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reid. This one was a 4 stars for me. I loved it. I feel like what I liked the most was how satire it was. It was kind of funny about things that should be serious, so that was like my favorite part about it. Then I read Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Gon. I gave this one a 3.5. The story is actually really good, but I feel like I think I rated it like 4 stars on Goodreads because I feel like I am recommending it to people. but I feel like I bought this book in 2019, and I feel like that should have been the perfect time to read it. I feel like now it's just too YA for my likings, so that's why I gave it a 3.5 on Storygraph. And then I read Hooked by Emily McIntyre. I like this book. I only read it at 4 stars because obviously, like, it's called Hooked because it's like a love story about Captain Hook and Wendy. So obviously he is supposed to be a villain, like a toxic person. So I wasn't obsessed with him and their romance, like their relationship, like I normally am with healthy people. But in this situation, like I was obsessed with it, but like I still can't look past the fact that he's toxic. So okay, last month we have December, which I read 11 books. So I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle. Is it 7 or 7? I'm gonna say 7. 4 stars. I love this book so much. I think I give it 5 stars on Goodreads because I highly recommend it. But I wasn't obsessed with it, which is why I rated it 4 stars in Storygraph. And then The Wife Between Us. This one was 3 stars for me. I read Ikigai, didn't rate it, but it was good. The Untethered Soul, I was not obsessed with it. I feel like everything I read on it is something I have read before. So if you've never read this type of book and it is your first one going into this topic, I highly recommend it. But if you've already been around this topic a lot, I feel like there's not gonna be any nuance to it, so I don't recommend it. Then I read King of Wrath by Anna Huang. This one was really good. I rated it 4 stars. I am so excited. I think she's coming out with a second one this year, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. Then I read My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This one was 5 stars. So much to say about this book, so stay tuned for my next video because I loved it. I loved it. It's a really dark book though. Like I feel weird saying I loved it, basically, because it's that dark, but I did love it. So then I read Olga Dies Dreaming. It's kind of like the story or like the history. It has a lot of history between like what's going on or what's been going on over the years with the United States and Puerto Rico. And it has a lot of like politics in it. It was just a lot of history that I already know because I'm Puerto Rican. So I feel like if you're not Puerto Rican and you're not familiar with what's going on between Puerto Rico and the United States and you want to be more aware of it and you want to learn more about it, this is definitely a good book to read because the story itself is good, but I found myself bored because I already knew most of this stuff. So I rated it 3 stars in Storygraph, but in Goodreads I think I did give it like 4 stars. Then I read Spells for Forgetting. Y'all have to explain to me. The ending for this book was a little bit confusing. I gave it 3.5 stars because I did not understand the ending, but what does the title have to do with the story? And does it have to do with like the ending? Because if it does, then I did understand the ending. But if not, then what happened in the ending? If somebody can explain that to me in the comments, that would be great. And while you're at it, if you can explain to me the ending of Sign Here by Claudia Lux, I give this one a 3 stars. Please do so because this book was so good. I feel like I was very into it until the end. And in the end, I was like, hold up, what? Like the last 10% of the book, I was like, what is going on? Like, I think I wrote on Goodreads, like it felt like it could have been 5 stars. And like the book was like a 4 star throughout. And I expected the ending to take me to like 5 stars, but then like it actually brought me down to 3 stars because it was confusing. Like throughout the whole book, I've been giving like hints, like little snippets of what's going on that makes me wonder about how it's all gonna connect at the end, but I feel like at the end it did not connect. So yeah, I was confused. Also, like the guy, like it's a story about a guy in hell. He works in hell and he has to get like humans on Earth to like sign things and shit. Anyways, the point is that like we get both like the story of the people in Earth and then him in hell. And I feel like, first of all, I think he is the uncle, and also the dad was kind of creepy with the girl. So like the girl had a friend that she brought to the vacation with her, and the dad was a little bit like too close. Not too close, but like it's hard to explain without spoiling it. You'll know what I'm talking about. Like the dad and the daughter's friend. What's going on there? What's going on there? That was freaking weird. Then I read The Final Gambit by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This one was The Inheritance Games Part 3, the last book in the series. And I rated it 3 stars because I hated it. I feel like this series could have easily been a duology and it would have been better. Second, it got way too confusing. Like after a while, it was like I don't even know what's going on because there's so many different, like it's just so much unnecessary things. Like you should have kept it with the plot twist at the end of the first book and then solved that, and that's it. Like, why is there more? I don't know. Like, I get it. Tobias, whatever, was a gamer, a non-gamer, like a player. Like, he loves making people play games. Blah, blah, blah. That's the point of the book. I understand, but like, there's only so much game I can play until I'm like, okay, when is it gonna end? Like Monopoly. Has anybody gotten to the end of Monopoly? No, because it is fun. So like the first book of this series was like when you're starting to play Monopoly. And then the second book of the series is like when you're like, okay, like we see that you're kind of winning, so can we like summarize, like end this game and say that you won? And then the third book is like if you force me to finish the game. Basically. That's what I felt reading that. Alright, last but not least, we have Blood Sugar by Sasha Rothchild. I will go in depth into this book. Well, I'm gonna say definitely top 5 of the year. It is basically about a girl or a woman who has committed murders throughout her life, and they're not like big murders. Like for example, the first one was when she was I think like 8 or 9 years old, like she was a child, and she saw a guy, like a kid that used to bully her sister, drowning, and instead of saving him, she held him under the water until he died, basically. So that, you know, like nobody saw her killing him, like she didn't, like she got away with it. So she did those type of murders throughout her life. So then her husband died, and she is the main suspect in that case. So it's kind of, and she didn't kill him, so like it's like her past and her future are merging together. And like, yeah, I can't say more without spoiling it, but like it's such a good book. I highly recommend. I feel like it's not raved about enough, so if you guys have not read it, definitely recommend it. So that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoy. If you did, make sure you hit that like button down below. Also, if you guys want to see me talk more in depth about my favorite books of 2022, so like my 5 stars and everything, stay tuned because that will be my next video. And I'm also going to be doing a video about my most anticipated releases of 2023, and I'm also going to be doing a video about my TBR for 2023, so like the books that are already out that I want to read, which is shelf up here that I will go through, and then my library holds. So yeah, if you guys want to see that, make sure you stay tuned, and I will see you in my next video.